So I call this meeting to order. Welcome to American Society of Civil Engineering, Missouri S&T Student Chapter. I'm your host, Chapter President Brennan Poole. We have a very special guest tonight. We're glad you guys can make it out. This is also being live Zoomed, and this is October 20th. So we call this to order. Obviously, special presentation tonight. Mo Dagani cannot make it. He's our chancellor here at S&T, but we do have National Student President Dennis Truax. Some words from our department. Dr. Joel Birkin.
Thank you, Brennan, and thank you everyone for helping organize tonight. Our students did a great job. We had a few good meetings with Dr. Truax and such. And again, Chancellor Dagani sends his regrets. He was unable to attend tonight. Go back here. And so I really want to recognize some of the ASCE support for our student chapter. It's been outstanding. We had a very nice dinner tonight with Dr. Truax and a bunch of our leaders from across the department and across campus. So I'd like to recognize the VIP, so to say, with ASCE. First of all, is our Region 7 Governor, Shauna Berger, also an alum of our organization, S&T. And also John Wieland, who's the chapter president section president from the St. Louis section. And I'd like to thank the St. Louis section for sponsoring tonight's events, including dinner for the students and all of the activities that we had earlier. I'd also like to recognize the multiple student chapters that are represented here tonight. In addition to our chapter, Missouri State chapter came tonight, and Dr. Sanjay Tiwari is a chapter advisor from Missouri State, and also our other chapter advisor, Dr. Kevin McLean, also here tonight. So thank you all for helping make tonight special. Missouri S&T has had a tradition of hosting ASCE leadership for many years. I think this is our fifth president in a row. And it's great that ASCE allows you the time and supports this to come here, because it really connects with what our students feel is their mission, and it goes all the way up to the national level and representing 150,000 members or more across many countries. So we're very fortunate to have that. And to introduce our speaker tonight, I'm going to hand it back to Brendan, because it's a student chapter meeting tonight. So Brendan.
Thank you, Dr. Birkin. So just to go in a little bit about normal chapter business, things that we do at ASCE, we host the National Concrete Canoe competition, steel bridge, social events, service events, all kinds of great resources that we're trying to get you guys connected here in the civil, architectural, and environmental departments. We also do site tours, resume reviews, and all that other stuff. And like Dr. Birkin was alluding to, 150,000 members and counting, and over 177 countries. Not just American, it's international. So we encourage you guys to join for free as a student. If you're wondering how, it's free for a student at asce.org/join. And you can obviously select any institutes that you want to be a part of, and obviously get connected with faculty and students. But without further ado, we're going to introduce Dr. Dennis Truax, professor of Richard A. Rula School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Mississippi State University. 41-year career as school director, endowed chair, professor, also held the endowed chair for 15 years. And he was elected fellow of ASCE in 1999, fellow of National Society of Professional Engineers in 2016. He received a 2020 Edmund Friedman Professional Recognition Award and 2018 NCEES Distinguished Service Award. So he has a very long career, and we're happy to have him here. And he's also elected president of ASCE for the 21 and 22 tenure. All right, so he's going to talk a little bit about ASCE. Dr. Truax.
Thanks a lot, John. And while he's loading my slides, let me say once again, thank you to all of you that have attended. Thank you for the invitation, Dr. Birkin. And it is great to see everybody here, both live and in what we might call Memorex in my generation. We're operational. Oh, that's excellent. Okay. I called it the Missouri Presidential Tour because we have a group of individuals represented, an amalgam of individuals represented. And what I want to do is spend some time with you this evening, hopefully not too much time, hopefully enough time that you feel the investment of your time in this activity will at least pay some level of a dividend or reward. It may be simply the satisfaction that it came to an end, or it may be the satisfaction that you've learned something that you didn't know walking through the door. Either way, it's a win, and so we take the win and go on from there. But when I talk about engineering the future, this has many facets. We're talking about engineering the future of our profession and of our society and of those constituencies that make up our profession and our society. And when I say society, I usually, as some of the room know, oftentimes we mention CAPS to only be grammatically correct when we're talking about the society, the American Society of Civil Engineers, or ASCE, CAPS society, as opposed to society at large, little s what we all live in. I'll try not to beat that horse too much to death, but all of this is part of the process. And the conversation, okay, we've got something not running right. My title slide's up. Sorry. I'm an instrument-rated private pilot, and there are times when you learn to keep your hands off the freaking controls. Back, forward, back, forward, back, forward. Okay. Back, forward. That's kind of fun. I think I'll just do that the rest of the night. We'll have everybody entertained. Yeah, I am an instrument-rated private pilot, and yes, I have lost the engine in my plane. And as a private pilot, we often joke about those who fly twin-engine aircraft know that they have a spare engine to get them to the crash site. So with that, let's move on a little bit. Everybody in this room recognizes is that our society, in every regard, depends on the work of civil engineers. When I talk about our society, I'm talking about the people that we live, who put trust in us. The profession of civil engineering is one of the most trusted professions, top 5, sometimes top 3, sometimes topping doctors and dentists. We won't mention the lawyers. Anyway, the idea here is that we have developed a reputation, a trust with society, where they rely on us. Why? Because when they see us, we're coming to help them. When we achieve what it is we do, we have made their lives better. When we finish the project, when we achieve our goals, it's not because our goals are self-aggrandizing or self-enriching. It's because our goals are to make things better for society. Protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public is part of what it means to be part of this profession. At the same time, we have to recognize we live in a very changing world. Politically, socially, but most importantly, from a climate perspective, climatologically. There we got it at. Storm frequencies, droughts in one part of the world, country, region, as opposed to excess water. I still have water laying in my yard, I think, from January of this year because we've had such a wet season. So this changing climate impacts the way we design, or will need to design, our systems. They need to be more robust, more resilient, more sustainable. And so we need to be looking to the next generation of civil engineers. Yes, the next generation of civil engineers to design new methods, using new materials, to solve new problems that we don't even perceive of in a way that is both sustainable, beneficial, and economical. This is a tough challenge. This is a tough time. But it's an exciting time because the road is open for you to decide how you want to go about doing this. We're in demand as leaders. And my challenge, my charge, ultimately through tonight is going to be for each of you to recognize as a civil engineer that you don't just have the potential of being a leader, you have the obligation to become a leader. Let me say that again. You don't just have the potential to become a leader. Everybody in here has that potential. May take a little more training for some. You may be a little more introverted, a little less extroverted. Your mentality, mindset, comfort zone may not exactly fit into that leadership mode. But something you need to also recognize is that regardless of whether you want to be a leader, you're a leader already. You're a leader, you can call it a mentor if you prefer, leader with your peers. You're a leader with the faculty that you interact with, the professionals that you interact with. You're already a leader. The obligation is to be an effective leader, to be a servant leader, as I have come to call it. And I want to talk a little bit about you as well. So, in what ways do you need to lead? Well, first off, you have to be a master builder. You have to understand that, again, you're going to have to come up with new ways to build bigger systems to address bigger problems than my generation ever perceived of. This master builder concept that we're advancing at ASCE and placing on your mantle of responsibility is looking for you as younger engineers to come up with and force a different design concept than we've ever used in this profession before. The example that I always fall back to, and it's one that I've created myself, so don't go looking for it. You're not going to find a lot of documentation, though empirical documents there. Simple answer to the group audience participation, and it should be intuitively obvious when I ask the question, who created the wrong side of the tracks? Okay, yes?
What do you mean by that?
The term, what's the term wrong side of the tracks mean? The question is, what do I mean?
You mean drive on the right?
No, the wrong side of the tracks. What does it mean? What's the concept? That should evoke a vision.
Bad place to live.
A bad place to live. Even worse, it represents a socioeconomic class of individuals who many people don't want to associate with. It's a class system. They came from the wrong side of the tracks. Who created the wrong side of the tracks? Civil engineers. We did. When we decided to build railroad tracks down the center of town, because that was going to be the most sharing, most accessible for everybody in the community. After all, that's where the stagecoach came. That's where major transportation artery is. Why don't we put the train right down the middle? What do we do? Everybody downwind from the tracks had to deal with the smoke and the dirt and the noise and the filth and all of the debris, air pollution, solid waste, and liquid pollution that came out of that train going through the center of the town. And everybody that had the economic wherewithal to get out of the downwind side moved upwind. And everybody that hated the people that moved into the upwind side moved to the top of the hill, and we immediately created a class system. We did that with the perfect intentions. We put in railroads from point A to point B. What's the answer we always say? Shortest distance between two lines is a straight line. Irrespective of the habitat we killed, the species we destroyed, and the indigenous persons that we displaced. We cannot do this anymore. We need to recognize the justice, equity, diversity, inclusion of the society that we need to embrace, and we need to design our systems to embrace that diversity. We need to ensure that we are not unjust in how we go about putting these systems in place. We need to address environment, sustainability, but socioeconomic impact. The other piece we also have to recognize as master builders are that while we talk about building public works, the national economy, the capitalist society is dependent upon what we do. As I've joked to many a prospective student at Mississippi State, you can have the best airplane in the world, but if you don't have a place to land it, what do you have? A waste of energy. You have the best automobile in the world, but you don't have a decent road to drive it on, what do you have? Lawn art. So without us providing the foundation for economic development and growth, everybody else is just spinning their wheels. And recognizing that places a horrendous burden and responsibility, obligation on you to be innovative, to not just use the same old concrete the Romans used back 150, 200,000 years ago, extrapolating time. Okay? They use the same concrete they used when the dinosaurs roamed the planet. Okay? New concrete, new steel, maybe not steel, new processes, new concepts, new designs, innovating, creating solutions that are sustainable in terms of energy demand, resource utilization. Looking at the future in a way where we recognize we do not live on an infinite planet. recognizing that we're all playing an infinite game called life, where we all don't win and lose. We all do the best we can each day. Innovation. Anybody know where this is? The Highline Project? Probably not. Yes, sir. You've seen the slide before. Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought I had a ringer in the room. Thanks, John. Absolutely correct. New York. Anybody know, do you remember what it was originally? It was a rail line, exactly. Does it look like a rail line to you? No. And what would a classic civil engineering approach be when the rail line decided to decommission it? We would have gone in toward down. Possibly explosively. Exactly, Joel. What's more fun than blowing up something in the center of 10? Yeah. Oh, that's going to get us in a lot of trouble. I'm going to have to talk to FBI later after class. But anyway, the idea here is that what they decided was, because this had divided the community, much like the the interstate highway did in Boston, which was replaced by the Big Dig, or the interstate that's State Route 99 that's going through Seattle, that's causing all kinds of environmental issues with congestion and pollution and rock stability and geotechnical formations and yada, yada, yada. Finding solutions around this. What they decided in this particular case is, let's make it a green space. Let's, instead of letting this structure divide people, let's bring people together. So they have concerts and art exhibits, and people have gardens there and gathering spaces. And the community comes together because of what civil engineering does, because of what these civil engineers did. Big Bertha, mentioned Seattle SR 99 earlier. This is the drilling machine that was built purpose built for tunneling under the roadway through the rock, and that was not an easy tunneling project, so that the interstate system or SR 99 and the adjacent transportation systems could move underground for Seattle. So they didn't have all of the issues, so they could get more capacity, so you didn't spend 2.5 hours in traffic trying to go from North Seattle to South Seattle or vice versa, depending on the time of the day. And if it doesn't help you to just look at this, do you notice what's in the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner? That thing that's red? That's a person there for scale. Okay? The largest drilling machine we've ever used in the United States. Second to that is the drilling machine they used for the stormwater sewer diversion system in Blue Plains wastewater treatment plant in Washington, D.C., which is taking the sewer overflow and the stormwater and moving it down through the CSO system that Blue Plains has for stormwater management. This is not just a one-timer. Okay? This is what we do. Everybody loves cows. Chick-fil-A loves cows. Everybody loves cows, right? What are you looking at? Yahara watershed. Anybody know where it is? Okay. Just checking. Madison, Wisconsin. Okay? Cheeseland, right? It's a dairy farm, right? Wrong. It's an advanced wastewater treatment plant. It's removing the recalcitrant carbon compounds, the residual solids. It's taking out the nitrogen and phosphorus with virtually no energy requirement on a 12-month basis.
I'm trying to interrupt. I'm sorry. Can we just flip that microphone?
Completely, I'm rubbing it, aren't I? It's rubbing and it's making a noise. I put it underneath because it detracted from the blue of my eyes. The good news is it matches my suit. He called ahead and said, wear a gray suit, it'll match the mic. And I said, yes, sir. Okay, is that better? We good? Okay. I walk around, I rust. I can take it off and hold it in my hand. We can do this all day. Okay, I rode a motorcycle. Okay, so wastewater treatment plant. They had a major wastewater treatment issue, and rather than build a major mechanical treatment plant, they treat it there. Innovation, creation, thinking out of the box, sustainability, superior treatment, reduced energy costs, all through civil engineering innovation. So what we're becoming are stewards of a sustainable environment. We're looking for these new ways of designing materials, designing systems, solving problems that has minimum impact, maximum benefit at a low cost, and a long lifespan. Life cycle cost analysis. One of the challenges you will have moving forward in your careers is convincing the employer, that the client that you're working for, to spend more money than they want to spend on a project because the life cycle cost is less. Why would that be the case? Simple example, and I go back to, I generally pull from mine. And I'm sorry, this is just where it is in Mississippi. I'm not suggesting this is anywhere else on the planet. I have a county supervisor who is spending $7 million on a road that has probably 100 vehicle count per week, and a handful of people, all voters, his district. And he's putting down 3 layers of chip seal and calling it a road. It would be broken up in 3 to 4 years. And I know this because the other 2 roads he built using exactly the same technique broke up in 3 to 4 years. So he has a proven track record of knowing nothing about highway construction. We have a dam in the community that failed, that the estimate is, yes, $7 million, but he doesn't have any constituency that benefits from the dam, so the dam is going to remain breached and such as it is. Okay? When I saw him, I asked, why $7 million on this? And he gave me his numbers, and I stood there in disbelief that he'd actually admit them. And then I said to him, you put this down this way because it was the most road you could build for the least amount of money. And he said, yes. I said, what's the maintenance cost? And he stared at me and said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I said, how much you have budgeted to repair this road 3 years from now or 4 years from now? Well, nothing. Why do you think it'll be needing repair? Well, how about the other 2 roads you built? Well, those were just, yeah. Okay? Cheap front cost, no maintenance, no O&M. Okay? Life cycle cost. This is what we have to do, sustainability. And then lastly, recognize that you're also managers of risk. ABET requires conversations about risk, and this is part of the reason why. Other part of the reason is ASCE has been pushing the idea of risk and safety wanting to see it pushed into the curriculum in a lot of different ways. But you're managers of risk. And when we manage risk, what we're able to do is lower the cost of our project in a risk-based analysis, or justify the higher cost in terms of that risk-based analysis. So you need to understand what the risk is associated with the project. So that when I build that structure on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, what's the risk that I'm going to have a Category 5 storm sometime in its lifespan that it's going to have to withstand? What's the probability that that tornado is going to take my house out, or that structure out, or that facility out? What is the risk to life and limb if you don't design it the right way versus the way you do? You have to understand that in a changing environment. And water resource engineers, you probably, at least where I am and all the people that I work with, have probably changed your design standard, your return frequency, from designing for 10, 15, and 25 years to 25, 50, and 100 year. Is it because all of a sudden we're more worried about less frequent events? No, it's because our data is so out of date, we're having to make adjustments to account for what used to be 10-year events that occur every 2 years, and a 25-year event that occurs every 10 year, and a 100-year event, well, that was last week. Okay? We're having to adjust our risk calculations, our probabilities, until our data catches up. Because at the end of the day, the client, the public, the individual, doesn't care if you had bad data when you designed it. They only care that you designed it wrong, that it didn't do what you promised it would do. So let's talk about what the future represents and continue that conversation. And this is where ASCE is headed with it. at the leading edge, forward, faster. We're asking you to join us in the grand challenge that faces us today of communicating the importance of building an infrastructure system for the 21st century, not the 19th century. We're dealing with infrastructure that has been ignored for 40 years. No investment, no significant changes, no adaptations, no optimizations. And we know this because ASCE does a report card every few years. We've been doing it now for over 2 decades. And while the report card's average for the first time was a C minus, everybody here wants to go home with that grade to mom and dad, right? After paying your tuition, you paying your tuition and showing that grade? Yeah, right. It's the first time we've been above a D plus since the creation of the report card. Pretty good. Here's the bad news. Out of the 17 areas evaluated, 11 of them were still D plus to D minus. No Fs, thank goodness. Okay? Of the 17 areas evaluated, 11 of them were still failing grades. Of the remaining areas, the highest grade was a B, and one of the Bs turned out to be our energy grid. Really? The one area we didn't evaluate was internet. It came along too late. Became too important, too late for us to evaluate. It's on the list. But we do have on our website, ascereportcard.org, you can look and see what we've talked about and what we've come together about, just how bad the internet system is. So as a result of where we are, we understand that our infrastructure system in the United States is no longer the world-class system it was 40 years ago. After my parents and your grandparents invested in the system unbounded because they understood the importance of making a better quality of life, aspiring to better things for their children, and understanding the importance of developing a robust, worldwide, competitive economy. And we've lost a lot of that, and it's up to us, up to you, to be part of the steward leaders that are going to change this conversation around. Yes, up to you to change the conversation and make it impactful. What ASCE's put together to start this conversation is what we call Future World Vision. We started it in 2017. 2018, we launched it out in one version. We've launched it in a couple different versions. We initially created the floating city, and you may or may not have seen a video on the floating city. We've changed, and for a lot of different reasons, our focus into what we call Megacity 2070. The reason for Megacity 2070 is that depending upon the demographic analysis you run and which agency you rely on, it's estimated by the year 2070, that somewhere in the neighborhood about 85% of all of the US will be living in an urban footprint, in an urban environment. So we're focusing on what it's going to take to create a sustainable urban environment and envisioning playing what-if games to figure this out in a computer algorithm system that has a virtual reality component, a high-end graphics component, which will eventually move into museums, much like our Dream Big project did. We're even talking about doing an IMAX around Future World Vision as a way of starting the conversation within the public, hoping that they begin to get an understanding of just how important the infrastructure is that we do. I'm going to play a short video of Future World Vision because in this particular version of the video, and I invite you, I entreat you to go to futureworldvision.org and read up on this and see the other videos and hear the conversations. And we're putting together projects, opportunities, learning modules that'll go into high schools and are already in many colleges being beta tested and worked out to become part of the curriculum. And this will give you a flavor of the mindset and the perspective that we're working from today as far as why we're doing this.
If you don't make a plan or make a goal and have a vision, then you just react your way into the future. And that's not what we want to do as civil engineers. We want to lead into the future.
How we do our jobs as civil engineers, maybe as systems engineers, will be different in the future.
What are the different cities we see evolving, and how can we really get an understanding of those cities? How can we immerse ourselves in those cities today?
What are the different social infrastructures, physical infrastructures that can be created in which we can all come together and thrive?
What's really important about looking at this through a world-building lens is that it is designed to look forward and then thread back into the present. The further out you look, the more it changes our view of the present.
We're literally forced to not only reimagine our communities, but to rediscover our neighbors, to rediscover many of the things that are right in front of us.
We're spatializing narrative and allowing the user to tell their own story as they navigate the experience of this virtual cityscape.
What can a megacity grow toward so that it's serving a better purpose? You start looking at individual buildings then, because you can typically shape a building. And can you connect several buildings together?
The buildings might form coalitions and interact with the utility, and the utility will interact with the providers of energy all around. That becomes a transactive energy system, and the buildings can play an active role.
I can design a microgrid that serves that district. Or if we need the microgrid to serve an adjacent district, we layer those together.
We need a water supply system that can meet 15 million people's needs.
Every building in the future should be capturing sunlight and rainwater, and every building should be recycling its own waste.
Ideally, the life cycle of infrastructure is one that is continuous, or perhaps reused in the future without going back and re-emitting all that carbon to do the same thing over again. That's the way we've built over the last century, and we simply cannot do it anymore.
Buildings are not unlike a human body. They have bones and skin. They consume energy and regulate temperature and generate waste. What if architects use genetic tools from synthetic biology to encode the architecture of buildings right into the DNA of organisms?
The facades now become active components. And one active thing that facades can do, they can breathe or they can sweat.
You can infuse biological functionalities into structural building materials.
Almost 100% of all the controls in buildings are going to have some element of AI in them and machine learning. As you walk into the building in the morning, the building will recognize you by your electronic signature. You would have created a profile about your temperature, your ventilation preference, and then some of this microenvironment might follow you.
What would social cohesion look like in the city of 2070? It's reasonable to expect that it would actually be vertical.
So, going vertically also brings its own challenges in terms of safety and security.
You might have 175 drones coming in at 11:45 a.m. delivering lunch. Where do they land? How much space are between them? What are the specifications?
It just has to be designed in a way that people can interact, and making sure that you're encouraging paths of travel that are spontaneous.
We're at just the right point in time to get together and build basically the aerial equivalent of what we did in this country with the national interstate highway system, and no longer be restricted to two dimensions. So how do you get the public involved in civil engineering, in the process of civil engineering?
One of the best ways that we can make sure that all voices are heard and included is to start with the people who are doing the planning and developing and see what their teams look like.
How can you ensure social equity and social justice and get input from the community for the projects that we're working on?
We are very conscious about the demographic, the diversity of the community and the society, and make sure that we don't leave anybody behind.
Creating these multi-use spaces is one way of doing that, of bringing people together. And once they're in the same shared space, there is more opportunity for connection, there's more opportunity for shared experience, there's more opportunity for civil dialogue.
The best solutions on earth, they come with diversity of thought. What I love most about the Future World Vision Project is that we can think about it together. We can have this dialogue.
Users will encounter one another and have conversations across disciplines that will begin to feed back and bring new information into the system.
We're trying to build a world and trying to build a machine that is creating absolute engagement of the user and of the engineer in their own future.
The Future World Vision is really at the core of what we're trying to do at ASCE in transforming the idea of what a civil engineer can be. And that's how we think that we can advance the profession of civil engineering and attract the best and brightest.
Oh my goodness. This fourth industrial revolution, married to the fundamentals of concrete, glass, and steel, is this incredible toolbox for society. It's really on us as civil engineers to pull that all together.
You noticed at the end of the video that we actually theorized 5 different types of cities. And during the last part of the last decade, we focused on looking at the floating city because of the just sheer number of individuals that live within close proximity to coastal areas. There's also the issues of increasing and addressing the issues of sea level rise. For example, there's some individuals that have calculated and estimate that by the end of your children's lifespan, half of Florida will be underwater. Others of the same analysis have estimated that within the next 10 to 15 years, the port of Miami will be inundated as a result of climate change that we're not able to undo by then, even if we started to make the changes. Just ignore it, they'll go away. I swear I had that thing turned off. Okay, sorry about that. For those of you, my phone's over here playing some kind of a crazy tune. I know you're not here to take notes, so I took some for you because what you just saw was a horrendous fire hose effort to introduce you into the variety of things we're talking about at ASCE. Towards the end, they talked about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Tough to remember, right? Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're ASCE, we're big acronyms. What does that stand for? Jedi. And being part of the Jedi movement doesn't mean you get a lightsaber. What it does mean is that the frickin' telemarketer, I'm going to go kick him in the head. The idea here is that we need to address the fact that we impact the quality of life of the people for whom we work, even if it is not obvious we're working for them. Okay? Second thing I made a quick note to here was the fact that we have to talk about community. And we are part of a professional community, and we are working within a societal community, and a socioeconomic community, an environmental community, all of which we are charged with a responsibility for care and stewardship. My friend mentioned the microgrid. Interesting concept. Be able to, we have spent decades with the idea that by connecting everybody into a comprehensive power grid, we're doing the right thing, and a comprehensive water distribution system, and a comprehensive wastewater collection system. Microgrid's a concept that where we break it down, and instead of maybe the entire city on one grid, we end up with a city on maybe dozens of grids, even to the point where a building would be on its own grid, independent from any central supply. Novel concept, right? TVA came up with it 25 years ago, and 25 years ago deemed it practical. So why didn't they deploy it? Your guess is as good as mine, but I'd say all that electrical cable that all the power companies hung and were trying to amortize the cost on may have had an impact. So as we move forward, we want to continue to build down that road. It's the same animal when we talk about the interstate system, which was built and designed by an individual who was a general who saw the failures of the roads, of the rail system during the Second World War because it was a bottleneck, and decided he wanted an Autobahn-style system. to resolve the transportation bottlenecks that existed in the 30s. And the interstate system worked really well at that, at the expense of rail transportation, water transportation, and optimized air transportation. Albeit, two of the three that I just mentioned are infinitely more efficient than truck transportation for the movement of goods and services. Don't believe it? Go to the nearest shelf and see what's not there. And ask somebody why the trucks haven't delivered it. And yes, I acknowledge that the ports are a bit jammed up because they've only last week started working 24 hours a day. Imagine that. I got boats lined up at my front door and I'm still working 8 hours a day. Okay? 5 days a week. So this is coming, okay? In addition, did you pick up on the importance of artificial intelligence? Now, you probably, depending upon your section of environmental engineering, you might be talking about artificial intelligence in terms of maybe a construction project where you're using robots to build brick walls. We've been doing that for a decade. Or print buildings using concrete or non-concrete materials. Been doing that for a decade, okay? All artificial intelligence. What about the transportation network? Anybody have a smartphone? Anybody ever have your phone tell you as you're driving down the road, I can save you 10 minutes if you take the detour ahead? How did it know that? First time it went off, I thought it was a telemarketer without the ring. I said no. I thought it was, then I got stuck in traffic. Next time it asked me, I said, hell yes. Took the turn, saved myself a half an hour. How did it know that? Because your iPhone and my iPhone are talking to what, Big Brother? Who's mining my data, serious heart attack. They're mining my data to project traffic flow based on my locale and projecting it back down to me so that I know that this is an area of congestion. This is an area where there's a stoppage. Did you ask them if they could take your data? Did they ask you? Well, actually they might have, but you might have said yes for the sake of being able to use your phone. Yeah, okay. In the state of Mississippi, we were using Google as our email system for primary, secondary schools and the colleges until we found out they were stealing our data. We went to sue them and we realized we couldn't do anything about it because everybody had said yes, up to the point we realized some of the people that said yes were minors and therefore didn't have the right to give away their data. And then we changed attorney generals. Anyway. The structural reuse, designing materials with the explicit use that they will be reused after their useful life has ended. Automobile makers have been doing this for decades, right? Why do we make cars more and more out of aluminum, lower gas efficiency, higher recyclable? Okay? What are civils doing? Still building out of the same concrete and we rubbleize it and put it in a landfill someplace. Got to stop that. It's a resource. The carbon footprint has got to be addressed. Let's see. Norma Jean mentioned the fact that we may be becoming systems engineers. Doesn't mean that we give up our civil engineering background, but what it means is we have to understand a broader diversity of fields. We've already been doing this. On a building, do you have to understand mechanical? Yes. Do you have to understand electrical? Yes. What about stormwater? Yes. What about energy management? Yes. Okay? Wind loads, foundation, water, transportation, ingress, egress, you get the idea. It's already complex enough, but we're also dealing with other disciplines. Architects, engineers, environmental scientists, all are part of our picture. Put in a green roof system, all part of our system. Who's going to be able to master? Who's going to be the systems engineer that masters all of these? You. You are the ones who are going to be the systems engineer mastering these. By the way, that concept of a microgrid, the idea that it'd be isolated, can you imagine a building where all of the water, oops, there we go. Can you imagine all of a sudden realized I hadn't punched the button. Can you imagine a building where all the water it needs, the people inhabitants need, is generated by the building? And all the wastewater generated is treated by the building. And that all the energy it needs is created by the building, and that the climate is managed by the building. One of the authors that was interviewed talked about it being a living building. What a concept. What a concept. Building on the right, my right, your left. 3 years old, Shanghai, China, does exactly that. This isn't tomorrow, this is yesterday we're talking about. We're already there, folks. We've got catch up to do. And the other slides are trying to illustrate the fact that using things like IT, AI, big data, connectivities, communications, complex systems, interactive networks. Our transportation systems are going to talk to our power systems because they're interrelated. And the power systems are going to talk about the water systems because they're interrelated. And the water systems are going to talk to the wastewater systems because, yes, they're interrelated. And the interconnectivity, the algorithms, the communication, while IT-driven, while electrical and what else goes with it, computer-based, programming-based, is still going to be designed by you. This is your challenge. ASCE is at a crossroads, and we're meeting that crossroads. We're expanding our reach, we're increasing our offerings, and we're trying to improve. We're changing the organization's paradigm to focus more and more on you as younger members. And again, I know we have students in the room, and as I've said to many of you already, and I'm going to say to the rest, as far as I'm concerned, you are a younger member of ASCE. If you join ASCE, I don't care if you're a student member or a younger member, you're a member of ASCE and you're a younger member until you get to age 36, at which time you're now, well, you're not a younger member anymore. Don't ask me why 35 is the cutoff. All I can tell you is they made it a younger member cutoff about 2 years after I got past 35. It's kind of like becoming a life member. Every time I got close to it, they moved the bar a little bit up, and we're about to move the bar again. But that's also another conversation. You're nowhere near that process. Challenges to licensure. Almost every state in the United States has had a challenge to the licensure of professional engineers. What's the first mantra? Why do we license? Protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. What profession is the primary licensure of the individuals in their profession? Civil engineering. ASCE is actively engaged with NCEES and other organizations to work to, NSP, to work to promote and protect licensure. And at the same time, we're working to look at new ways of being more inclusive and improving credentials like certification, credentialing of individuals, so that, okay, you're a PE and you're a civil engineer, but maybe you're a geotech, or maybe you're an environmental, or maybe you're a structural engineer, and you'd like to set yourself apart as being qualified to do not just sewer design, but advanced wastewater treatment plant design. Maybe not just homes or simple commercial buildings. Maybe you'd like to document, demonstrate through some form of credential that you're able to design a high-rise structure and protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So this is what we're working on. Competitive organizations, we are already in the process of turning them into collaborative organizations. I've mentioned again to a few of you during this visit, I have a call set up where we're going to be talking about ASCE in China. ASCE is already in India. In fact, we're already in 177 different countries around the planet. I mentioned to others, which is part of the reason why we've gone to talking about us as being ASCE. Yes, in the family, we know that means American Society of Civil Engineers. But as ASCE on a global platform, we are the preeminent expert of civil engineering on a global basis. And we're advancing this forward so that if you choose to practice somewhere on the planet, we're there to help you do that in an effective way, in a way that protects the individual and ensures that you're successful. We're developing media. We've gone digital and hybrid and are going back now face-to-face on conferences. We have recognized that membership is stagnant. Marcia, I'm pleased to announce that for the first time in more years than either of us want to recognize, ASCE's membership is going up this year. substantially. And it's not just the fact that effective immediately, if you're a graduate of an engineering program and are a member of ASCE at the national level, you will automatically become an associate member of ASCE at no cost to, or sweat and tears to you, okay? All we need you to do is make sure that your email address and your profile is up to date. We will switch you over to associate membership. Historically, that would have cost you a few bucks, okay? And if you graduate in May, by the way, that's a year and a half free. So we won't even get down that path. We make our census year starting the first of the calendar year, January, and we make changes over in that process. So we're going to give you that first year free. And what I'm working on is trying to get younger members and sections and branches and institutes to put together programs to engage you the moment you're there. Mentoring programs. So that when you hit the workforce floor, there are people there helping you, ensuring you, guiding you, resourcing you for your personal success, however you define that. We want you to be the best version of a civil engineer that you want to be. It's not for us to dictate that. It's your decision. It's what you want to invest. It's what you want to achieve. It's your life's goals. It's your work-life balance. It's your economic reward. It's the geographic and geologic position you want to put yourself in, and it's all your choice. But we want to be there to make sure that you succeed, however you define success. And then dealing with the competition for resources and recognizing and helping understand. We're about to publish a new manual on sustainable design and what it means to do a comprehensive analysis to define what sustainable design is. Came out of one of my committees when I was chair of the Committee on Technical Advancement. I actually wrote the foreword to it. Really proud of this document. It is an applicable document, and it isn't codes and standards. In fact, the biggest argument we've had from various industry components is it doesn't have the standards. It doesn't tell me what I have to do. I want to be able to look at a number and say, I've met that number and I'm good. It doesn't work that way because we want you to create new solutions. We want you to come up with the best solution you possibly can. That's what we're looking for. Risk mitigation, comparative analysis, life cycle cost analysis. That's what this document's going to be about. So ASCE can be and should be a roadmap to your career in the sense that we're here to help you succeed. Our goal is to make sure that you are prepared to be part of Engineer Tomorrow. And we've retooled this and reframed this. If you know anything about what we've done in the recent past, we came up with Engineer Tomorrow because it's not just, notice what it says. Are we talking about a person or are we talking about a process? Am I talking about the engineer of tomorrow or am I talking about engineering tomorrow? And the answer is yes. Yeah. So with that, we created a new code of ethics. Simply put, now look at it briefly with me. I'm going to spend just a minute on it. Top left, what's our first and foremost priority? Society. Protect health, safety, and welfare of the public. What's our second priority? Environment. What's our third priority? Profession. Why? Because if the profession isn't protected, you aren't going to be respected. We stand on the shoulders of those who preceded us. So we're here to say that in the same regard, you need to protect the integrity of this profession, one of the most trusted in the country, by acting in a professional, ethical way with respect and recognition of your servant leadership responsibility, your stewardship to others, and your emphasis on service before self, others before you. Fourth, employer. Fifth, peer, because people need your help. You're a mentor, whether you recognize it or not. Now, if you closed your eyes about now, with just that brief introduction, I'm sure you can say society, environment, profession, client, and peer, without ever looking at the board, just like I did. Okay? And we did this so you could internalize the concept of professionalism without any concern. We're here to help you become the type of person you need to be. We need you to be a leader. We need you to engage your parents, your colleagues, even political issues, in a conversation that explains the importance of what it is we do, either using the report card or whatever it is, whatever resonates with them, and understand. Understand that these leadership skills that we're talking about that takes you into the public environment transfer back to your ability to work within the professional environment as a leader, a manager, a designer, a creator, an innovator. These same skills then also are important because we're going to provide levels of connectivity that, that's going to hurt. This is a fun video, but I'm going to go past it in a second because I'm running a little bit long on time. So with that said, forgive that one. It's the way you do it. So we talk about you being a servant leader in terms of developing public policy. Have anybody here ever aspired to run for the U.S. legislature? I've had students do it. They didn't succeed, but I've had students to become mayors and state legislators. You can too, and affect positive change. Should you get a PE is a question that many engineers getting ready to graduate is. Let me think about it a second. Yes. Let me think about it again. Yes. Let me say it louder. Yes. Why? Because it establishes you as an authority. Without the PE, you're a graduate engineer, nothing more. With the PE, you're a professional engineer. Embracing, accepting the obligation to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public, putting other people first. It establishes you as having a technical and professional credential that sets you apart from everybody else you're working with, unless they happen to be PEs, and then you go get certified in a particular area, and you can laud that over them. But the idea here is, this is the first credential that you can seek and obtain with your degree from S&T or MSU or wherever you happen to be coming from, any accredited program, that will set you apart from all those other people that don't. And I recognize that there are some individuals who can't pursue the PE in certain law constraints, but we're working on that. Again, we're trying to be more inclusive and recognize the importance of being part of the program. Do you need a graduate degree? Well, maybe. I use this illustration because in 1995, SEI or ASCE 7, the structural code that is incorporated into the International Building Code, consisted of a whole 236 pages. And that by 2016, roughly 20 years later, it had grown to 888 pages. And as of now, it is so freaking large, we had to put it on the web page, make it interactive, and we don't publish it as a book. And we're in the process of making it larger. Somebody commented to me earlier about how much the profession has changed. Yes, and hold on, it is changing even more, even faster. And if you want to work in a particular area, a graduate degree may be the answer. But it's not the only answer. There's other ways to get that information, other ways to grow that. This is the fastest, most economical way for you to develop the body of knowledge that makes you a full civil engineer in that particular technical area. The institutes are in place to help that, 9 of them right now, and then the Committee on Technical Advancement has 9 other work areas, ranging from aerospace and critical climate conditions and cold weather, all the way down to codes and standards and sustainability. And we're looking at making all of those institutes focus centers for research, technical advancement as well. So, ASCE, somebody asked earlier, what about being involved in my section, in my branch? Yes, networking. I know, networking. The best thing you can have is somebody in this profession that you can confide in. Got an old video, one I'm not going to show you tonight, where an individual has nobody else to talk to about an ethical dilemma that he finds himself in. And he goes to a bar and sits down with his buddy from college and has a conversation about what I should do. Buddy gives him great advice, he ignores it, he loses his license, he goes and finds another profession. Good ethics lesson, that's the end of the story. Anyway, but the idea is having somebody to share a technical question with, a professional question with, a development question with. How do you manage work-life balance? How do you address my desire to be involved in social change? How do I have an impact on society? When are we going to have the next baseball game that we're getting together for? Because I just love having a beer with you. Whatever it is. Networking, social interaction, which we've really struggled with thanks to cousin COVID, as one of our past presidents would say, is something we're getting out of. Engage. Become part of the team. Understand. We have a number of resources, all available at ASCE. These resources include internships, job opportunities. You're a member of ASCE National Student Loan Refinancing Programs, credit card, insurance. We have people that have been members of ASCE for 40 years, and when we talked about doing something that might have jeopardized whether or not they wanted to remain member, the first thing they mentioned is, I can't afford to be without your insurance. Which, unfortunately, my answer would have been, fine, then we're going to do what we're going to do, because you've already told me this is more important. But they didn't. That's okay. World of opportunities? Yes, you can work anywhere in the world as a civil engineer. You can work anywhere in the world more effectively as a member of ASCE. As I mentioned earlier, we have 177 countries being represented in some capacity in an organized sense. We're partnering with organizations in China, India, and Europe to expand the impact we have for the purpose of facilitating your ability to move into those work environments if you so choose. Trust me, they want to move into ours. You may want to move over there as well. A broad list of member benefits. I'm not going to let you read it. I just want you to remember, we got a horrendous number of member benefits, and if I get an ASCE membership, I must be getting way more than I ever paid for, particularly if it's free. ASCE Source, if you're a member of ASCE National, you get an email probably every day with information that's being talked about. Read it. And if you go to the website, I got an even better. If you go to the website, what's going to happen is every click you make, our algorithm is going to record it, just like Facebook. So that the next time you come back, the website is going to be designed by artificial intelligence for you, so that what you see is different than what somebody else sees. Okay? I mentioned a report card. Quoted in the halls of Congress. Quoted as part of the President's infrastructure bill. Cited in the congressional record. And it's not because it was proving their point, it was because it was proving ours. We have the respect of legislators because while they understand civil engineers may monetarily benefit if infrastructure actually does get funded someday, we're having the conversation because of our professional obligation to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public and make a better quality of life. They recognize that, and we have individuals, myself included, who have met with legislators and policymakers pushing the idea that infrastructure is key if we're ever going to reestablish ourselves as a world power on the economic playing field, irrespective of what's held up in Congress right now. 22 years of doing the report card. And we have report cards for virtually every state. And again, I apologize, I don't have Missouri's up with me. I meant to capture it, but I didn't. But here's the national report card. Again, 17 areas. You can pick your favorite and see how well or how badly it did. Dams I'm stuttering. Dams are down there. In our area, we kind of laugh. We pick on Alabama a lot. Alabama is the only state in the nation that doesn't even have a dam inspection program. You can spell dam any way you want to. But anyway, no inspection program. 90% of dams are deficient. 40% of dams threaten lives. The dam that failed that I mentioned earlier in my county threatened some 200 homes. And if it hadn't been through the extraordinary long-term effort of basically one individual, those individual lives might have been lost. Taking inordinate action, living at the dam 24 hours a day for 3 solid weeks to make sure that the dam was never breached. And then when he did get it to where it could be fixed and the spillway corrected so that the water never came out to the point where it jeopardized and caused the leaks that were occurring, he finally got to go home. Anybody want to guess what the discipline was for that individual? Civil engineer. Happened to have a master's in geotech, for what it's worth. So the future's really bright. ASCE is on strong financial standpoint. We have a lot of programs that are coming down for younger members, students and younger members, promoting value and growth and leadership skills. We also have a concept of dealing with the whole profession. Our society for a long time is focused on one segment, consulting. We are now focused on government engineering, industrial engineering, civil engineers working in industry, as well as civil engineers working in consulting and academe as well. Whole family, whole community projects. We developed a corporate partnership program where individuals can sign up and be part of the program and end up saving money and at the same time facilitating member engagement. We've talked several times over the course of the day about talking to during interviews. What do you want to say? Here's the answer. If the company's part of the corporate partnership program, your memberships are already covered by them. And we're putting something together like this for academicians. We've already got something together like this for government engineers. In fact, we have several DOTs already signed up in the program. Not because we necessarily want them, though we do. We want them as part of supporting again, when you walk in and talk to Congress about a report card, how do you get into the door? You tell them you represent 150,000 members. When I come in the door and we talk about 175,000 members and 14 Fortune 500 engineering companies, we will definitely have a conversation at that point. But the corporate partner is an effort to do that. Younger member engagement, moving them out of the dark spot and moving them into the limelight, facilitating, focusing on the development of younger member programs, of course, then the younger members transition. Younger members, Steimer, the regional conferences are all leadership development, as well as we're working on, we have a PE review program that is very robust, very well respected on the national plane, very successful. We provide free PDHs to continue your license. What's the one piece that's missing here, students? The FE exam. And I'm hoping that before I leave this office, we will have a program in place that will facilitate you as a member of ASCE in succeeding at taking the FE. We're in negotiation with 2 different companies to bring that to you at a significantly reduced price. Younger Member Council, 118 different member groups. There's a place for you when you walk out of here to plug into ASCE in the younger member groups, and these younger members engage in a lot of different ways. And then lastly, the student member page at ASCE for resources that we already talked about. The corporate partners program that we talked about briefly, and the associate partners program, which I've talked about only in passing. This is where small companies can come in and pool the member. So this partner program isn't limited to big companies. Biggest employer of civil engineers. Anybody guess? Who's the biggest employer of civil engineers in the U.S.? Boeing Aircraft. Boeing Aircraft. Go figure it. We're all pilots at heart. Benefits program, we're going to go by it anyway. The membership value, I'm sorry, these are a couple slides that got stuck in at the end, are supposed to go away. But anyway, member value. That's what we've provided for decades. I'm focused on member engagement. Take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I'm here to make you drink. Okay? Member engagement. You can't be part of this if you're not a member, and that's what we're looking for. Okay, closing with this. It's all too often said that Darwin said survival of the fittest. Never said it. It's a bastardization of what Darwin contended, and you've already read it now. What did he say? It's survival of the most adaptable. And we as a profession are adapting. We as professionals are adapting. You are part of that adaptation, looking at new ways of tackling new problems with new materials, new designs, new processes, with a spirit of stewardship, accountability, and a recognition that your first and foremost obligation that I'm challenging you to accept is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public in everything that you do. Putting service before self and doing that collectively as being part of ASCE and the programs that ASCE will sponsor with you to make you a success in any way you define it. Okay? Oh, geez, another slide. Okay, that's my last slide, seriously. ASCE, if you're ever on social media, these are the 2 hashtags we're out there pushing around. We are a servant leader. ASCE made me. So thanks a lot. Any questions? I think we've exhausted the time and then some, have I not? John, yeah, have I don't know what my, yes. Hi, Mom. Anybody in the room have a question while the people over there telegraph in? I'm trying to receive, but it's not coming. Sure, Marcia. Yep.
And I'm a podcaster, so I love to listen to it. And the other thing I was going to say is public policy. We are taking the lead in all the things that Dennis said. We have a climate change policy. We are taking the lead when it comes to some of the changing environments and things that are happening. And we've taken some heat for that in the profession, but it's important. We need to do it.
Yeah. The ASCE website, asce.org, recently redesigned. Some people don't like it. I think it actually works pretty well. The search engine works wonderfully. You know, I'm not getting PDFs from 20 years ago when I do the search engine anymore. Go search public policy and see the dozens upon dozens of positions that we've taken. Go search student membership. Go search younger member engagement. Go search future world vision. Go search ethics. You'll see everything I just gave you, but in much, 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 much richer, fuller detail. Okay.
Truax,
Yes, sir.
I have a 2-part question.
Okay.
One is on the how many engineers are in the Senate, the United States Senate, and in the House of Representatives?
Oh, I can count them. On, yeah, I know exactly. I can count them on both hands, without raising a finger. We have one professional engineer in the Congress, and he's a mechanical.
Okay, and then the second part is you were talking about the roadway system, and that we look at lifetime costs for, of course, concrete's always going to beat out other stuff, but a lot of times, like I said, the public or the state or whatever has money for that time period, and if they don't spend it, they lose it, type thing. So they're going to go and pay for what they can afford.
Right.
I think you basically have to change how, like say, when I was with MoDOT, my budget, I had a budget for the year, and if I didn't use it, I possibly could have lost it for the next year. So I always had to spend that money.
Yeah, yeah, use it or lose it, governmental mindset. It does need to be changed. I will give you the analogy that we ran up against in doing what I was doing. As director of the Mississippi Transportation Research Center, the individual that was the research director at Mississippi Department of Transportation had used a creative financing solution that overcommitted MDOT to the tune of somewhere in the neighborhood of about $120 million. At a very time when Federal Highway was cutting back on the allotments coming into the state. The end result of that was because while he was gambling that the money would come back and backfill, which it never did, the result was that we basically were without doing any funded research funded by the state of Mississippi for 3 years until they could get their act together. Now, what they ended up doing was creating an interesting financing plan where they could budget and bond projects in out years with the expectation of funding coming in. So the idea that I have to work from current allocation, my allotment from the state for this year, switches to now I'm going to bond my projects and I'm going to pay the bonds off with the allotment from the state. And it does two things. It obligates the state, which they have to acknowledge too, because you don't issue bonds, it's the state that's going to issue them. So they recognize that they've bought into this and now they have to pay the bill. And so instead of working hand to mouth with the state appropriation, what you're now working is a long-term planning strategy with a bonding process that obligates the state to pay the bills off as needed. And now you've got a cash flow process that allows you to do that long-range planning and long-range development. And that's what we shifted to in the research division at MDOT. Now we could just get the other 8 divisions to switch over. Life would be really good. But they did the opposite. When they were finishing the AHEAD project program, they actually at one point said, look, we'll come in and just pave the road, knowing full well in 4 or 5 years we'll use maintenance funds to really pave the road. Put down a thin surface course. And exactly happened what they expected. After about 4 years, they had to be out there repaving the system. Anybody else? Is there any way to listen off? Anybody calling in? No. Okay. Phone a friend.
I have another question.
Is it okay? No.
Well, somebody's got to ask questions, but
sure.
Anyway.
No, not really.
I discussed this with some other people about like architecture and sometimes architectural engineering. You've gone to where you've actually go to get your, you don't just get a bachelor's, you've got to get your master's. What about with civil engineering? Is there any push? There used to be talk about going to get your master's, automatically.
What's that? I did that. I said this. I'm sorry. It's my hair. Because of the attacks on licensure and the fact that we're actually talking about a different licensure model, we are focused on professional licensure, yes, but we're looking at it in the sense of the community of the civil engineer, which means that there would be places for technicians and technologists within this licensure environment, much the same way as on the other end of the spectrum, there's conversations, which we're actually researching right now, about the value of promoting board certification. Now, the model that I'll leave you with is one similar to the medical profession, where you have your ODs and MDs practicing at this level. Then you have your board specialists, dermatologists, surgeons, oncologists, optometrists, ophthalmologists, oncologists, cancer. And then you move down to this layer where you have the nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, registered nurse, maybe in some states still LPNs. And so you end up with this tier based on qualifications, skills, adaptability, responsibility, and then specialization. And that's what we're kind of looking at. There's a lot of push to make this go away. And this is the argument. It's his fault. You're probably not aware of it, but I'm going to make you aware of it in as few sentences as I possibly can. I was sued by a company called Tire Engineers, based out of Birmingham, Alabama. I say I was sued, that's not a full picture. I and every member of the Mississippi Board of Licensure was sued in name and in whole by this group because we as a board told them they can't use the name tire engineers. Why? They're not engineers. There isn't an engineer anywhere in the company. They're a bunch of tire changers. Even worse, they're tire salesmen, one step up from a used car salesman. And they did some oil changes on the side. And the company bought, and I'm not going to get into that. I can get off into that, and that's going to be a different issue. I'll leave that right. But let me say, we were sued. We collected data. We pulled information together. We polled the people in the state of Mississippi, and the question was asked effectively, and I'm summarizing a very big survey, but let me say, in effect, what it said was that 78% of Mississippians that were surveyed expected that a company called Tire Engineers would be an engineering company. I'm not going to talk about the other 22% that filled out the survey. They may have been undecided. I don't know. But the 78, okay? We took that to federal court because that's where we were sued. Never like being sued in federal court. Gotta love it. And we won the case. The judge actually never took us to trial. He looked at it and said, the evidence is so obvious. Okay? So what was the result? Appeal. And it was appealed in the Third Circuit, which is New Orleans, a 3-judge appellate. I could characterize the 3 judges. I won't have to. I will simply say they overturned. Almost. They didn't tell us we had to change our law. They simply said we couldn't enforce it. Okay? But here's the beauty, the reason I mention it, the reason I bring this story up for you. The reason they said that they were siding with Tire Engineers was that we couldn't prove that anybody had ever been hurt because of their use of the name engineer. Now, first off, we didn't have any access to their data, and I'm not sure we'd have ever seen it. But how do you prove a non-starter? Okay? This is the argument with engineering. How do I prove that licensure saves lives? We still have buildings collapse. We still have levees fail. We still have civil engineering projects that don't do what we expected them to do. How do I prove that licensure is protecting the public? How do I prove that we made a difference? Well, there's one simple answer. Stop licensing, let anybody do it. And then count the bodies. Okay? As professionals, we have to argue against that. We can't abide that concept of, but that's the environment we're in right now. There's also a group of individuals that feel that by having licensure in place, take a deep breath, their argument is that licensure prevents people from practicing engineering. Duh. Isn't that the purpose? Yeah. Who is it that we're preventing from practicing engineering? These people that aren't competent to practice engineering, that can't pass the tests, that don't have the education, haven't developed the experience, the 3 pieces of licensure: education, examination, and experience. The 3 E's, the 3-legged stools we all talk about. How do you prove a non? That's what we're up against. And then I'll also throw into a lot of these individuals that are arguing it come from the side, and this is an argument I've actually had levied at me as a result of some of our legislation, some of our rules and laws in the state of Mississippi. Well, if the design is bad and they're hurt, they can always sue the person. A civil action, right? Sounds like something a lawyer would advocate for. And I got friends that are lawyers. Don't get me wrong. I pick on them all. You know, what's the favorite joke I use with my 2 lawyer friends? What's 500 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. Okay. So with that said, what I say with and by the way, lawyers are a group that should be just as interested in specialization identification. You want to go to a lawyer that specializes in tort reform to have your will made up? I don't think so. Unless you want somebody arguing what the will said after you've come and gone. So this idea is just something that's really dynamic. We're struggling with, but we're trying to advance it, and understanding that the forces are sitting there saying, prove it. So we're trying. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm used to the 75-minute format. Yeah. I told some students earlier, I said one time I was giving a presentation and I was so focused on making sure I stayed to the 20 minutes, I put a clock under my screen, which held my camera. And so, of course, we were talking about virtual. And I marked and I flipped and I marked and I flipped and I marked and I flipped. And I watched the clock. And at 20 minutes, I stopped perfectly. And when the president of the chapter or branch, whichever it was, said, okay, thanks everybody, we'll cover business later, we'll see you next week, click, and everybody disappeared. And I was in that virtual room all by myself. I looked down at the clock in the lower right-hand corner of my computer screen and realized an hour and 20 minutes had passed. Not the 20 minutes I had been allotted. I'd burned up more time than anybody wanted. But it felt natural to me. But anyway, I appreciate your attention. I really do. I'll hang around after the meeting's over if you have any questions, you'd like to share anything. It's nice to be, one of the best engineering programs in the country. Okay? It's been a lot of fun, folks. I hope you're safe going home tonight. Again, thanks for spending your time with me. I appreciate it.
And in the interest of time, we're going to table ASCE chapter business, and we're going to regularly now send it out after the meetings as a recording as well. So we'll send that out as an email. Make sure you're subscribed to Engage MST and get on the chapter email list, and go to asce.mst.edu to get on our chapter website, check all the cool things, and obviously asce.org to see all the resources. Thank you, Dr. Truax. Good night, guys.